horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and happy Halloween, my favorite holiday. I want to apologize for my severe lack of videos last couple weeks. A lot going on, all my free time's been booked, but I did save time for today, Halloween. I got a handful of videos I'm going to try to get done tonight, and two of them are very Halloween related. One's a Patreon request, and first I'm going to get to this one, which is a film I've wanted to see for quite some time. I've been reading about true crime since even before this film came out, but I remember reading about this actual case years ago, and I've been reading about it again in preparation for this film, and it is 2007's An American Crime, which is based on the 1966 case of Gertrude Baniszewski versus the state of Indiana, or the murder of Sylvia Likens, which is one of the worst cases of child abuse probably ever recorded. The state of Indiana still maintains it's the most heinous crime ever committed in the state. This is actually the second film, or this is the second attempt to make a film based on Likens and Baniszewski. First, there was an attempt in the 80s, but Sylvia Likens' sister Jenny protested it, didn't get made. Her death was, I think, in 2004, and that's when we got both, and then in 2007 we got both this and a movie called The Girl Next Door, which is based on a Jack Ketchum novel. The difference between the two is this is based on a true story. Girl Next Door is inspired by a true story. Now, there's a huge difference between the two. I know some people will say, well, in my opinion, this one's more based on... No. The fact is, if something's based on a true story, like they have the same names, same scenarios, sure, they Hollywood it up, change some things. Inspired by is more of an original story that literally inspired by something else. Like, this is more like Monster, whereas Girl Next Door is more Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. But even more inspired, because at least Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is more so speculation of the stories of Henry Lee Lucas. But anyway, this is a pretty fascinating case just for how heinous it really is. I mean, could almost make a whole video on the case itself and the differences between... Well, actually, the differences really aren't that much. But you have Catherine Keener as Gertrude, and you have Ellen Page as Sylvia Likens. And above both their names, it says Academy Award nominees. So this must have come out just after Juno, I'm guessing. Now, I haven't seen too much with Ellen Page. I saw Juno. It was not really for me. But I did like her in Inception, and she did wonderful in this. Catherine Keener did do a great job as Baniszewski, but despite how good her performance is, the movie does try to, at times, portray her in a sympathetic light, which she did not deserve. The real Gertrude Baniszewski is definitely one of the most evil women to ever live. I mean, say what you will about Bathory, Topan, Borden, even Warnos, or more modern ones, Susan Smith, Andrea Yates, Casey Anthony, even Jodi Arias. But this woman was just a systematic, sick woman. Pretty much the story is Sylvia Likens is a 16-year-old. It takes place in, well, it jumps back and forth between the actual case in 1966 and the events of the 3-month period in 1965. And this film is actually largely built around actual court transcripts. So if you want a more disturbing, more extreme film, which I noticed a lot of my viewers really only watch my reviews of extreme films. Like, I could put, like, I don't know, whatever. This one is more factual. This one is more historically accurate. Whereas Girl Next Door is more of, like, the Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer shocking stuff. So if you want more of the actual story, go for this. But this is also just a well-made movie. You do have a really good cast as well. Supporting cast. Bradley Whitford is the prosecutor, because it shows the children involved in the case, which would be the Baniszewski children, which in the film there's 6, where in real life there was 7, with Bradley Whitford asking them questions about the case, and then we jump back in time to the events. And the story is 16-year-old Sylvia Likens, her 15-year-old sister Jenny, who has polio. Their parents are part of the traveling carnival, and they need someone to watch both Sylvia and Jenny, and they leave them in the care of single mother Gertrude Baniszewski. This film implies... no, not really. I was going to say it implies some sort of affair between her and the Likens' father. At least that's what I was getting at in that one scene, but it shows that she kind of flirts with everybody. So they stay with her, and the agreement is $20 a week, which she says that, she's the one that makes that call. I think it was actually offered by the Likens' father, the $20, but either way. And one week, the check comes late. And from that point on, she just starts to systematically abuse, torture, very gradually, poor young Sylvia. Starts with, being hit with a belt because the check was late. One of her older daughters is having a fling with a married man, because of course this was back in the 60s. She gets impregnated by the married man. He wants nothing to do with her. She tells Sylvia that she's pregnant, doesn't know what to do. She promises to keep the secret. The guy kind of starts to get rough with her. They kind of start to hit her. She sees and tells him to back off. She's pregnant, trying to help her. The daughter gets mad at her. This other kid, Ricky Hobbs, which was another boy that was involved, overhears. And then the rumor gets spread that the rumor of promiscuity from the daughter Paula gets spread, and supposedly is coming from Sylvia. And from that point on, the torture and abuse just gets gradually worse. Now, I will say, it's a 92-minute film, and this did not get a theatrical release. It was supposed to, but I think it was funding or the studio didn't want it. So I think it aired on HBO, and it actually, I mean, it went on to the Emmys and the Golden Globes, but as far as like a TV movie, especially with something like this, like sure, it aired on HBO, but it's one of the better ones that I've seen. My point was, for being an hour and a half, you're not going to get all 3 months worth of torture in this. I mean, they did show, and you don't really see everything. Like, there's something that they make her do with a Coke bottle. They don't really show that. That's more implied. It does kind of show the branding on her stomach. It jumps ahead a lot. Like, they kept her down in the basement, but that didn't happen for, I think, a few weeks into the torture. Here, it almost seems like they threw her in the basement right away. But supporting cast, there's a lot of familiar faces. James Franco plays sort of like a boyfriend to Gertrude, supposedly the father of the new infant that she just had. Alright, who else was there? Evan Peters plays Ricky Hobbs. I know he's been in a bunch of other stuff. Scott Reeves, or Scott Eastwood, whatever you will call him. He plays a boy that goes to the church with them. Scout Taylor Compton as daughter Stephanie, Gertrude's daughter Stephanie. I have never been a fan of Scout Taylor Compton. The small bit she has in this film is probably the best thing I've seen her in. Some scenes she was as annoying as she was in Rob Zombie's Halloween, which those movies do nothing for me anyway. Or even her little bit role as Lita Ford in The Runaways. I have to say this is the best thing I've seen her in, or her best performance, as small as her role is. I did say Bradley Whitford. Michael Welch. He was in the first Day of the Dead remake. He was the lead. Haley McFarland plays Jenny. Okay, she was on Sons of Anarchy. And yeah, it shows how Baniszewski got her own children to engage in the torture. The neighborhood kids were all involved. How neighbors heard screaming but thought it was best to just mind their own business. Both of these performances are excellent. They both did a wonderful job. I do disagree with how they try to show Gertrude as being sympathetic, because she was on a concoction of different meds at the time. And as the film goes on, it shows her kind of being more and more out of it. Even being somewhat remorseful during some scenes, especially at the end. And she didn't deserve that at all. I mean, she should have been portrayed as the monster that she is. So I was a little disappointed. I mean, even Monster with Charlize Theron, that even portrayed her as somewhat sympathetic. I'll sympathize with Warnos before I sympathize with her, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I was thinking about putting this under my, like, extreme playlist, but I mean, it is kind of hard to watch, especially when you take into consideration that this all really happened. But again, like, this is more, if you want more of the true story, check out this film. If you want just something more of, like, what's something really fucked up that I could, watch, it would be The Girl Next Door. I didn't even say who it was directed by. It was directed by Tom O'Haver. That's a typo. Tommy O'Haver. There's a typo on this. Ellen Page was the only actress that they wanted for Sylvia Likens. I can see why. Catherine Keener originally turned down the role, but after, I think, hearing the story or reading about the story, she couldn't get it out of her head, and then she met with O'Haver, and she accepted. Ellen Page actually starved herself for this role. O'Haver realized she was getting really thin, and he asked her about it, and she said she's not eating because Sylvia didn't get fed. And at the very end, it does say, like, what happened to, like, the rest of the lives of Gertrude, her children involved, the neighbor kids that were involved. And it's all fairly accurate. It still baffles me that, well, I can't... Is it spoiling if it's based on a true story? Because, I mean, you can always look up the story. I'll say spoilers, but I do recommend this. If you're really into, like, true crime, especially stuff of, like, this nature, I do recommend it. Even for the performances alone, Ellen Page and Catherine Keener did do a great job. I would have liked to see what Catherine Keener could have done if they had just went completely nuts with how evil she is. That would be my one gripe about this film, is that and I was saying her whole performance, or the whole movie, is her, like, feel sorry for Gertrude too. She was a sad, sick woman. It's only certain parts, especially towards the end. It does go really fast. I mean, like I said, it seems like right away they throw her in the basement. You get, like, sort of a montage of events, and then it's ultimately what happens, which does happen in a different room than the real story. In this, it's in the kitchen, not an upstairs bedroom. But even that's a fake out. I think the reason why they did that... Sorry, I'm all mixed up. I haven't done a video in a while. I'm kind of out of my rhythm. Spoilers. Go check this out. If you're into this kind of true crime story, definitely check it out. It's really good, especially the performances. I like the direction. I like how it's all based on real transcripts and testimonials. Definitely check this out over Girl Next Door. Get the real story first, and then watch the more shocking one. It's for free on YouTube. I think this one is too, actually, but I wanted this anyway. So, spoilers. Towards the end, we get a scene where the pregnant daughter, Paula, is trying to sneak Sylvia out of the house. she's talked to Gertrude about how she's learned her lesson. Because that's sort of the whole thing. Sylvia keeps getting blamed for everything that's going on. Even when Gertrude gets the checks, she doesn't say anything. She acts like she still didn't get them. Or when both Lycan sisters collect cans and bottles, return them, and then make a long-distance call with the change. She accuses her of stealing the money to make a call. Or about how Paula is a slut, even though that was never said. Or that she's pregnant. You know, supposedly all came from Sylvia. At least that's what she was led to believe. Or even came up with. And at one point, Paula does hit her so hard that she breaks her hand, which did happen in real life. But Paula's sort of the first one to feel bad about it. So we get this sequence towards the end where she helps Sylvia get out of the house, which she's been in the basement, malnutritioned, beaten, branded, whipped. They didn't show any scalding baths, but that's another thing that happened in real life. And then she meets up with, you know, eventually she's found by Ricky Hobbs, a neighborhood boy that likes her, but he was sort of in on the torture as well. I think more so in real life than this movie lets on. But he puts her in a car, drives her to the carnival. She finds her parents. They see what's happened to her, like even the branding on the stomach. And then they drive her to the house to get her sister Jenny. And that's when we see that it's all a dying dream. Sylvia's actually in the kitchen, not breathing. Kids are trying to revive her. So I think that fake out was... I would assume for levity. Like maybe show what could have happened if history could have been changed. Sort of like a what if, I guess. Or maybe just for levity. But from there, we see that Sylvia has died. Hobbs calls the police. And we see that Gertrude gets sentenced to 20 years of a life sentence, which she did get released in 1985. Couldn't believe it. Even with what she was found guilty of and a petition of 40,000 signatures, she still got out in 20 years. Died 5 years later. But I thought this was a really good movie. I thought it was going to be a little more, I guess, extreme, because I have seen this movie pop up on, like, most disturbing films or upsetting films you only need to see once. So I thought it was going to be a little more hardcore. I'm not upset that it's not. I still enjoyed it just the same. I know there's some people that will probably be upset that it's not a Serbian film, you know, those edgelords, but but you know, that's what we have Girl Next Door for. That was sort of like when the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie came out. People are like, well, it didn't show him doing anything. It's like, yeah, there's like 3 or 4 other Ted Bundy movies that do show that. This one is about the other stuff. I thought the performances were great. I really liked the direction. The soundtrack and the music score were both well done. You know, really great songs from the 60s. But also original music by Alan Lazar. especially during the end credits, which it does say in memory of Sylvia Likens. There's sort of like this little girl kind of chant or singing, almost like a Rosemary's Baby kind of tune. The only gripe I would have is that they really should have just had Catherine Keener just be a monster. I mean, cut out all the sympathy for her because she doesn't deserve it. Even after death, she doesn't deserve it. The character, obviously, the real-life Gertrude, doesn't deserve it. But, and I think every kid actor does their job just as well. I mean, Haley McFarland as Jenny, I thought did a great job as well. I really like the cast in this. But yeah, I'm sorry if this review wasn't super in-depth, but it's kind of hard talking about movies that are, really based on a true story. Not like the Blumhouse films that just put that on every paranormal movie. Because you'll just end up comparing it to real life, and that could almost be its own video. But I really did enjoy this. I mean, it's not a fun watch, but it's not as shocking as you might think, or as some articles might try to tell you. But it really is, for the performances of these two. And I thought for the time it was given and for what they did show, it was pretty faithful to the real life events. It was fairly accurate. I mean, minor differences. I mean, yeah, she really had 7 kids instead of 6, or she died in an upstairs bedroom, not the kitchen, or she was actually, shackled and chained in the basement, not tied around a post. There was different forms of torture, like they gave her scalding baths. But, yeah, American Crime, especially for a genre where it's like these true crime, especially murder cases, where they do change a lot. They change a lot of stuff. Like most serial killer movies will change names and scenarios. Very few are really accurate. I say this is one of the more accurate, like, real-life murder cases in a film. So I thought this was a good movie. Definitely recommend it. But American Crime, thank you for watching.